Hi everyone, Ben here from CatalanSoccer, and today we're going to be showing you how to pass a ball like this guy. They were just a few examples of why Steven Gerrard was one of the best passers of a ball of all time. So today we're going to try and master his technique. All we're going to be using today is just a big supply of footballs. You don't need any fancy equipment for this drill, you just need a massive amount of ammo to keep on firing. Part 1 to this technique is all about trying to get your laces underneath the middle of the ball to generate backspin. Backspin will help you make the ball climb, will help the ball float in the air for longer, and will help you get more distance on your passes. The easiest part of the foot to use to generate backspin would be the toes. However, if you use the toes, you won't be able to get enough height and distance on the ball at the same time. Today, because we're going for a long range passing technique, we have to be able to use the laces. So let's show you how to do that. Tip number 1 is your standing foot position. Make sure your standing foot is quite far from the ball. Notice from the example here, we don't want to go too close with the standing foot. Bring that standing foot a little bit further away from the ball. It will help you strike with the laces and get underneath the middle without having to sacrifice power and distance. Tip number 2 is about your toe position. Make sure the toes are pointing away from the ball and try to think of the toes pointing sideways as you strike the ball. It's the laces that need to point forward as they are the striking surface, not the toes. Tip number 3 is do not open your foot. For these examples, watch how we open the foot and use the inside of the foot to strike the ball. Whilst we are striking the ball in the correct part, which is underneath the middle, we are using the incorrect surface. So these first few examples are all bending to the left. Watch how the ball shapes over to the left hand side and pulls away from the target. Notice now that we start to use the laces, we change the striking position, we make sure that the laces strike through the bottom of the ball, and that generates more backspin. See the difference here in the spin that's generated on the ball, and watch how that brings it closer to the target and not pulling away to the left, not slicing off to the right. We're trying to go in a very straight line here, so make sure that you're striking through the middle of the ball, underneath the middle of the ball, and with the laces pointing forward. Tip number 4 is power comes second. The first part of this technique is trying to generate lift, spin and height. We are not trying to get too much distance just yet. That will come later on, but for now we need to develop technique and we need to build on a strong foundation of hitting the correct part of the ball with the correct part of the foot. So for these next few examples, we're just going to try and generate backspin and take out the distance. We're making sure that the foot is in contact with the right part of the ball and actually slightly in contact with the floor to make sure we get right underneath it and generate as much height and lift on the ball as we can. So now that we're generating more backspin and more lift on the ball, we're now going to focus on distance. Just before the execution, we're going to exaggerate the power, make sure we hit the ball that little bit harder. When you do introduce power, it's really important that you keep your technique. So don't overexert, don't try and hit the ball too hard, just add the power incrementally, which means a little bit at a time, go a bit further, a bit harder, and the ball will travel further, but without you sacrificing that technique that you've just worked on to generate the spin and the lift. Tip number 5 is about bending your knees and getting really low to make sure that you can strike underneath the middle of the ball. If you're too high, if you're too tall, you will not be able to get full power through the bottom of the ball and underneath the centre. So it's very important that we bend the left knee if we are striking with the right foot, or we bend the right knee if we are striking with the left foot. Watching a couple of these examples here, how there is a real bend and emphasis in the left knee, what that does is give our whole body that diagonal position. That diagonal position at 45-degree angle on the body is really important to make sure we can get underneath the ball. It's vital that you bend that knee. If you don't, you will struggle for height. You won't struggle for power. You can still kick the ball hard, but you cannot kick the ball high. Tip number 6 is about where to use these passes. These passes are very useful for long distance and long range. We're trying to make sure that these passes cannot be intercepted by going above head height, but they must have backspin on to make sure they come down and are easy to control for a receiving player. The other type of pass that you can use these for is a lofted through ball. Imagine you're playing the ball over the top of a centre back or over the top of a full back for a striker to run onto. If you don't apply backspin to the ball, it will run through to the keeper. If you don't get enough height on the ball, a centre back or a full back will intercept your pass. So we need to add the power, add the backspin, and get the height. If you get all 3 right, you'll be able to go over the top of a defence, but make sure it holds up nicely for your striker to run in and finish. And the final tip is to hit as many balls as you can. I'd estimate for this you're going to have to hit at least 1,000 balls before you feel like you've really mastered the technique and you can do it consistently under pressure. Now 1,000 balls might sound like a lot, it might sound a little bit daunting. You might be thinking, Ben, I don't have time to hit 1,000 balls, I've got homework to do, there's a new season on Fortnite, I'm not going to be able to hit 1,000 balls. But do the maths, it's only 20 balls a day for 50 days. That's not really that many. If you can just get out in the garden or get out in the park and try and hit 20 balls a day, before you know it, you will have mastered a technique like this. It doesn't take that long. Now imagine if you go out and hit 20 or 30 balls a day and do that for 2 or 3 months. That's... 1 second. Loads. That's loads of balls that you'll have hit. 20 balls a day is not as hard as you think. Don't forget, subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great content coming soon, and leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time. Sometimes you get too much distance.